let's go through this frivolous exercise of seeing what the experts think of the Texans draft class. And the first two that I'm going to get to here were two of the draft analysts that we canceled before the draft because of their analysis of the Texans taking a tackle with the 42nd pick.
Well, no, we only canceled them if they had the Texans taking a tackle and they didn't address the fact that Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard were already there.
Right.
We didn't cancel them for taking a tackle. Yeah. We canceled them because they projected a tackle in the first round without any mention at all of Titus Howard or Laramie Tunsil.
Yeah, not just there, but extended last offseason, both of them, committed to. But so Mel Kiper, you're out of Payne and Pendergast draft jail. And you're onto the radar here with your report card. Well, here, Mel Kiper Jr., Seth, gives the Texans a B+. A B+ for their draft, and says for a team without a first-round pick, Houston had a nice Friday, filled a void at corner with Kamari Lassiter. He consistently locked down corners at Georgia, 2.8 yards per attempt as a primary defender. Kamari Lassiter had some good numbers last year as far as just shutting guys down. He says Blake Fisher had a chance to be a first-rounder if he came back to Notre Dame this year. He'd be a first-rounder next year, and the Texans get him. And Kalen Bullock had 9 interceptions in college, good center field type safety. And as you pointed out, tight end Kate Stover made Mel Kiper Jr.'s favorite pick list at 123.
Right. Yeah, the Cade Stover pick, I think, ended up being, and it's a perfect match too. You know, the old, especially when you get into the mid rounds, you know, there are much better places for some players than others. And I think, obviously, the connection with C.J. Stroud is going to help him right off the bat. I think the Texans probably had very good word of mouth from C.J. And I do think, I think C.J. is, I would guess he's pretty frank in discussing his former teammates with the Texans because he is all about just flat out like, all right, it's about winning, you know? Like, I don't think he was going to blow smoke up Nick's butt just because he's a Buckeye. So I would imagine CJ gave him really good word of mouth. And I think the only thing I would say is if you're grading just the names and the performances and everything, then there's that level of grade. I also like to look, though, at, okay, what was this GM trying to do? Mm-hmm. And I thought some things about Nick's strategy were borne out well, but there were other things, like the very fact that I think he was definitely trying to trade up for either a defensive tackle or a cornerback, and he wasn't able to do that. So in that regard, I think they might have underestimated just how devalued the later round picks were, and he just didn't have the capital to get up there, or at least the price was too high. Yeah,
sometimes, you know, you go, well, you can always move back into the first round. Like, well, it's not that easy. You got to find a willing partner, and you got to find a price, and meanwhile, you're doing it while you're on the clock. You know, you got 10 minutes to do it. It's not like you got all day to sit there and go back and forth, texts and things like that.
Right. If you're in the bar at 12:50 a.m. in a place where the closing time is, 12:50 a.m. In closing time is 1 a.m. It's not like, hey, you got plenty of time to find a lady.
No.
Like, no, you got to get to work.
You got to close.
You got to get hustling.
That's right.
You got to start throwing 7th-round picks at these ladies.
Sometimes they don't take those late-round picks, man. I'm telling you.
You try to go into a strip club with a 7th-round pick these days. Good luck.
Hey, is Chad Reuter the one that grades really easy?
Yeah, because he works for NFL.com.
Okay.
And the worst grade he'll give is a B-.
Okay, well, not shocking.
Typically. Every now and then he'll give a C.
Not shockingly. All right, so if you get a C+ or lower from Chad Reuter, you really got like a D-.
It's basically like you got kicked out of school.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, then you can suck at Cleveland and your C+ from Chad Reuter.
Guess what he gave the Falcons?
What?
C+.
C+.
Yeah, so
the team that's getting widely panned for taking a quarterback with the 8th overall pick. He gave the Texans an A-. An A- for the Houston Texans, and Chad Reuter, who, by the way, was also canceled by Payne and Pendergast. He's out of cancellation jail now, so you've got a clemency now.
I'm scrolling through Chad Reuter right now, and I have seen the only C I've seen was the Falcons so far, and I'm all the way down to the Saints.
Cleveland got a C+. The Browns got a C+ too. Houston built on the momentum from last season's playoff run with a strong plan. Pre-draft trade netted the Texans a second-rounder and didn't prevent them from addressing a roster sore spot with Kamari Lassiter. Says Stover was an excellent choice in round 4. He'll be reunited with C.J. Stroud. Acquiring veteran running back Joe Mixon for a 7th-round pick earlier this offseason also factors into the draft grade above. So he's mixing Joe. He's no pun intended, mixing Joe Mixon into the that was completely unintentional. I promise
Whatever. But I see it in the notes. It's right here in the notes. You put
it. Not true.
And then after you put in brackets, you said, "Am I right, Seth?"
Yeah, that's right. Hashtag Am I right? So A- from Chad Reuter.
Good job, Chad Reuter.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the Lassiter pick preventing the cornerback spot from being a sore spot. Obviously, if Lassiter works out, that's the case. I do think that I am intrigued now by the competition at cornerback because you've got a whole lot of talent there. Mm-hmm. And, at least one of Okudah or Henderson will make the team. And you've added athleticism with those two guys there. So I'm starting to get intrigued by the cornerback position.
Matt Verderame of SI.com gave them a B-. For the sake of time, let's go to the worst grade that the Texans got. And I feel like Pete Prisco is probably like the anti-Chad Reuter. CBSSports.com.
It's hard to win his approval. He's he's a disapproving father. He is.
Yeah. So this would be one where the Texans.
I'm going just real quick, Sean. I'm going through Prisco's grades.
Yeah.
There's like 2 A's along the whole. He's a tough grader. Yeah.
He's the professor you're trying to explain to your parents. Like, no, a C is really, really good in this guy's class.
Yeah.
Because he's a hard grader. He gives the Texans a C+. C+ for the Texans. Best pick, Kalen Bullock, rangy safety who will give him depth this season, but will eventually become a starter. He can run. Worst pick, says he didn't like the pick of Kamari Lassiter in the second round. I think there were better options where when he went, guys like Mike Sainristil, the slot corner out of Michigan, says Lassiter ran a 4.64 at his pro day. I'm going to tell you something Nick Caserio does not want to hear about right now. 2 things. Report cards that Seth and I are doing in this very segment. And 2, 40 times where a guy like Kamari Lassiter is a 10th or a 10th and a half seconds slower than guys that got picked ahead of him.
One thing I noticed this draft is I think this year really maybe I think certain teams have been using the GPS data, the tracking data for a while now. And this is one of the things I think Nick really likes about why he's really only drafts Power 5 guys. It happened again this year, only guys from big conferences. You get that GPS data matched with going against future NFL talent, and I think you get a much better feel for how fast these guys actually are, as opposed to the guys that run good 40s and have good 3-cone drills, but it doesn't show up on the field. So I don't worry about that. Yeah, Prisco says he would have liked Sainristil better. Like, Sainristil is I don't even care if I pronounce his name correctly. He is a lightweight slot corner. And I just don't know if that's in D'Amico's bag. D'Amico wants guys like, if he's got a slot corner, he wants a guy like Des King that can come up and smack him in the mouth too. So I wouldn't downgrade it based on Lassiter versus anybody else. Now, if the Texans were trying to move up to draft Terrion Arnold from Alabama in the first round, that's a comparison that, man, I would not be surprised if the Texans absolutely loved Terrion Arnold.
Agreed. The other grades, B from Charles McDonald, Yahoo Sports, a B+ from Trevor Sikema, ProFootballFocus.com. You throw those 6 report cards into the mix, and the final GPA for the Houston Texans, Seth, 3.05. According to these 6 outlets that I found.
See how that's good. It's not good, but if they really nail the LSATs, they might get into they could get into law school. You're gonna have to apply to a bunch of places, but still, there you go.
Yeah, the MCATs, they can go to. They can still be a doctor. It's okay.
What about that 305 with a doctor? You can go be a lawyer somewhere. Okay.
I was about to ask you: would you rather your doctor have a 305 or your lawyer have a 3.05?
Is your last name Vanderbilt? I don't know.
You're right.
You're not getting into med school with that.
That's right. Some good text messages. People they're thinking on their feet this morning on the draft. Is Blake Fisher a message pick? I like that.
I don't. Okay, message pick. If you're drafting somebody to send a message, then that dude is cut already. Yeah. Like the guy that
and obviously they're referring to Titus Howard. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if the prospect of winning championships, making millions of dollars, doing anything else isn't enough to get the message, then them drafting a guy in the second round isn't going to send a message either. I think that it's Nick afterwards said, look, you flat out need a third offensive tackle. I think if it sends a message to us maybe if you read the tea leaves that maybe Charlie Heck needs to really step it up, because as of right now when I watch Blake Fisher, I'll be surprised if he supplants Titus Howard this year. And I also Nick flat out said he thinks Titus Howard is one of the better tackles in the league.
He did.
I think that there's something going on where people forget that Titus Howard has not really actually played his chosen position all that much lately. I think they look at his performance at guard and think that means he's a bad tackle. So I don't think it's a message pick. I think it's a genuine, you want a third offensive tackle, and you'd like that third offensive tackle to be able to develop into a starter someday. And then maybe a year or two from now they move on from Titus Howard. But I don't know if I'd call it a message pick.
Yeah, text message. A lot of people like the Stover pick. Stover, my favorite pick in the draft. If CJ vouched for him, that's good enough for me. And I think something to point out again, like you said, Seth. I don't think CJ is just going to give praise for a guy because he played with him at Ohio State. Right. CJ's going to get now. Maybe if CJ were on a podcast or something like that, and someone asked him about Cade Stover, and he was lukewarm on him, he wouldn't throw the guy under the bus. But behind closed doors, CJ wants to win. He wants good players around him. He's not looking for a family reunion on Sundays.
Right. Yeah, I think that connection will be nice too.
Yep. All right, Payne and Pendergast with you on a Reaction Monday. So good job. 3.05, Nick. You got a B. So you have a GPA of a B, and I can tell from the audio we played earlier, you could give a damn about that.
I can't wait to tell him all about it.
Oh, no, I'm going to when we get him on, we're going to see what he thinks of his GPA for sure.
We got to have him go. We'll go down through every single one. We might have to read him Prisco's.
Yes.
Prisco was when I was a young player in Jacksonville. Prisco was the beat writer, and Prisco would go at Tom Coughlin. It was actually pretty impressive.
Yeah,
they battled kind of the same way that guy in Tennessee used to battle Vrabel.
Kuharski.
They were It was fun to watch as a player. Because you're kind of
it's
stick
brave.
It to him,
right?
Or stick it to him, Prisco.
You're the voice of the voiceless right now for us. Thanks, Prisco. All right, Payne and